Welcome. I want to show you my new shirt Robin just got me.
Okay.
I'm Ben doing Ben things.
Nice.
And this is my friend Robin.
Hi,
Hi, Robin.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And that's Chip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't make it in time for my doctor's appointment, but it made it in time for today, so that's good.
Yes, exactly.
That is good.
And he has it in time for the next appointment, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe by the next appointment,
Mm-hmm.
It won't be an issue
that will
because
be legal.
it'll be
Legally
in
done.
January, so I've got time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to our homes.
Yes, yeah.
Lovely. Welcome to mine. Got some nerves. The cats are just kind of prowling right around that area there.
I've got one over there, and then I've got one in the
Mhm.
kitchen, and I don't know where the other one is.
I have two that I'm sure will introduce themselves at some point. The one just left, she was just busy eating trash in here, so I'm glad she stopped doing that. How many cats do you have?
I have two.
Okay.
I got this beautiful Lynx Point Siamese. She is sweet. She is incredibly smart. Kind of vocal. Named Delilah, but she was so just really needed a friend really bad. So I got her a friend because I'm at work 10 hours a day. So I was like, let me get her a friend for those 10 hours. And so I got a polydactyl calico named Cindy Clawford.
Named what?
Cindy Clawford.
Amazing.
That is
she's
so
polydactyl,
good.
so of course Clawford, yeah. And she's got like a little beauty mark. So I was like, she's Cindy Clawford. That's all there is to it. Yeah. Cindy Clawford is.
Do you get a lot of "Hey there, Delilah" jokes from guests?
It's one of the first things they say, but
Yes.
it was one of the first things I said when I realized that was a name that she was responding to. I was like, okay, this is it. It's like, hey there, Delilah, do you like your new home kitty?
Okay, you're the perfect guest because that's what Robin and I do all the time. We're constantly singing and making up new lyrics.
Yes.
I mean, we are all over the place. We get very silly. We also get very serious. And whatever happens to happen today is going to be wonderful. And I'm so glad you were able to join us. Should we do our intro?
We should do our intro, yeah. So we normally start our episode with our little catchphrase, which goes a little something like... Hey brats, my name is Robin and I'm trans.
My name is Ben and I'm trans.
And you are listening to Ben and Robin Are Trans, the BRAT Pod.
Yes, and today we have a guest. He is a lawyer named Chip Clapp, and he did my name change a week or two ago, and he's here to talk to us about name changes and being an advocate for the trans community. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me on. This is just incredible. This is my first podcast. It's my first podcast.
Which is wild.
You have the distinction of being our first cisgender guest of the podcast, too.
I'm assuming, anyway.
What?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
That is an honor.
Yes.
It's an absolute honor.
We're happy to have you be that person because, like, I mean, I consider what you do like serious allyship because, like, you definitely helped a lot with Ben starting his name change process, and like I think I emailed you this too. Like I've been on him about it for so long, and then the election happened, and I think that was when. I mean, I'm not going to speak for you, Ben, but that's probably when you were like, time to pull the trigger.
I work best with a deadline, and that seemed to be a very hard deadline for me.
Mm-hmm. The neurodivergence.
You are not the only neurodivergent trans person to be working on a deadline. I've probably put in about 20 hours of pro bono work just in the last 2 weeks or 2+ weeks since the election. People coming to me asking, how do I do this process? It's so much. It's just so much. And it really is because your name touches on every single part of your life, everything from work to going out and socializing to driving a car. Everything, your name is attached to everything you do. And, I can walk into a room and I can say, "Hi, everybody, my name is Chip." And nobody goes, "Yeah, but is that your birth name?"
Yeah.
Nobody says that to me. So until the day trans people get that same respect, I'm going to keep doing this kind of work for free, or as
And
much
thank
as much
you.
of it as I reasonably can.
Yes.
Yes.
And I want to shout you out for delegating to a colleague, because my friend Ren reached out to you, and then you had so much going on that you delegated to a colleague and you got them taken care of, and they are so happy. And I wanted to share that as a moment of trans joy for today, that
Yeah.
you've helped at least 2 people in our community so far.
Happy to. And that colleague is Gershon Young, and he and I actually met doing name and gender marker changes. So one thing that I don't know if I got a chance to tell you when we were working on yours is that I've been doing name and gender marker changes since 2017. So just after Trump took office for the first time, I've been, I would say I've been an ally for years, but I've been actively anti-discriminatory, anti-bias since about 2017 when I started doing this work. And there's a difference between just being an ally and really putting in the work to be anti-bias.
Yeah, I think we call you an accomplice. You're not just an ally, you're an accomplice.
Yeah. Well,
I like that a lot.
Well, I've said so many times, like, allyship is not like using somebody's correct name and pronouns. That's just like human dignity. And that's what everybody should be doing. But allyship is like more of an active thing. And just like respecting another person. I feel like that's just like being human.
Base level. Yeah, exactly, base level.
Yeah.
How do we treat you like everybody else?
Yeah, exactly. Before we get into it, I think Ben was low-key calling me on this at the beginning, but we do like to start off every episode by asking our guest to describe their gender to us in their own words. I called you out as cis, but like you can describe with your own words like how you identify yourself.
So I do check the box for cisgender male. Gender for me is a very, it's a personal thing. And I understand that my gender experience as somebody who identifies as a cisgender male is not the same as other cisgender men.
Yes.
But at the same time, I am so far on the masculine side that I'm like, could I describe myself as non-binary? Maybe, but just for checking the box, I go cisgender man.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that we try to just say, like, can you describe your gender, as opposed to like, how do you identify, or like, what are your pronouns, or something more like common like that, because I feel like most people want to like investigate a little bit or have the conversation. There's often like a but ... in there.
There is. I mean, I am steps away from saying non-binary because my gender experience is that close to, despite looking like I do, having a beard and all that. And yeah, it's my experience of gender was not playing sports. It was not, being the rough and tumble kid that everybody expected of me. It was playing Barbies with my stepsister. It was being included in groups with lots of girls at school. It was not your typical cisgender man experience. And part of that does have to do with me being a gay man, but also even gay men sometimes don't even have the experience that I've had gender-wise. So I think it's sort of a blend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something we talk about with gender a lot, is that no one's gender is the same. Even like 2 trans women aren't going to have the same.
Yeah. Because gender is up here. I mean, that's, I said I met Gershon, my colleague, doing name and gender marker changes. So myself and a colleague named Barry Houserath out of Richmond, he's just an amazing advocate. He still teaches the course. I don't do it because of just time restrictions these days. I'm on the board of Quality Virginia and whatnot. But we used to teach a course together to other attorneys about how to do name and gender marker changes for trans people. I did that from 2017 to 2020. And Barry and I always opened up the continuing education course for these attorneys the same way, which is we would start off introducing ourselves, giving our pronouns, and then we'd ask the question, all right, who likes to talk about their genitalia to complete strangers? Wait, just me? And yeah, it's so unbelievably personal. Until they got asked that question, these predominantly cisgender attorneys had no idea what that was like. And for trans people, just understanding that it is that day in, day out, every time you present an ID, every time you have to disclose to somebody that you're trans, every time you talk to somebody that you're interested in as a romantic partner, the conversation is going to come up.
It's absolutely
wild. It came up in my sleep specialist appointment on Tuesday. He's to talk about my sleep.
Yeah.
It's wild, the things that people feel comfortable saying to you once they know that you're trans that they would never say to any other person in their life. An example that I've heard used before is people are very comfortable to ask a trans person what's in your pants or whatever, just like normal conversation, but you wouldn't, some random person you just meet, be like, so are you circumcised, or like...
Oh, I'm Puerto Rican on my mom's side, so I actually used to get that all the time from...
Okay.
I'll just say it, white people in the Deep South. White men in the Deep South in particular. Yeah.
Depending on the context.
No. These gay white men in the Deep South raised, in Georgia. I was living in Georgia at the time. When they would find out that I was half Puerto Rican, regardless of what our relationship was, regardless of whether there was any interest, any flirting, anything like that, they would just out and ask me, oh, so does that mean that you're uncut?
If you're like in any marginalized group, you're just automatically like a level dehumanized.
Yeah. People I had just met, I was talking with another Puerto Rican friend about this last night, which is how it came up. Because we were talking about that kind of objectification and the pervasive sentiment that certain elements of our society have some right to know what's in somebody's pants. And
people are
I found
wild.
Certainly, yeah. And it's certainly more some groups than others that ask those questions.
If you were a straight white man, I guarantee that you wouldn't be getting that question all the time.
Yeah.
And for the record, what's in my pants is usually chapstick.
Underwear.
The what's in your pants challenge.
Since you are a lawyer, did you want to like do any disclaimer about how you're not our listener's lawyer, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. So while I am a lawyer, I'm licensed in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. What we're talking about on the podcast today is going to touch on the law, but what you hear from me may apply in some circumstances, may not apply in other circumstances. Everybody's circumstance is going to be different. So I am not your lawyer, dear listener. I am just a lawyer. And if you do have questions about your situation, please talk to an attorney. If you are living in DC, Maryland, or Virginia, you can feel free to reach out to me at my law firm. I have a very unique name, and you will find me on the internet.
Your name is great. Anyone I've mentioned your name to has been like, that is one of the best names I've ever heard. It is so good. It packs a punch.
Yeah, you don't have to hear it twice. It's just like, got it.
Yeah, it's memorable.
Yes.
So you were telling me when I did my name change about how you've given talks even at like Catholic universities about the importance of name changes. Why? You also already touched on it a little bit, but like, what kind of protections can trans people have by legally changing their name?
Oh, it's
a big question.
That is a question that has a lot of answers to it, because there are so many protections that go with changing your name. uh, when you change your name, you're changing it to comport with your identity. And one, just in the way you interact with people, it gives your identity itself some protection, socially speaking. Two, when you're stopped by the police, you can give the name that you feel without having to worry about them dead naming you, particularly if you get the gender marker changed to whatever your gender is. That is going to go a long way to access to facilities, all sorts of different rights and privileges. There was a case in the Fourth Circuit, Kesha Williams versus Stacey Kincaid. Now, I practice in Fairfax County. Stacey Kincaid is the sheriff in Fairfax County. Kesha Williams was an inmate in the Fairfax County Jail. Ms. Williams was arrested, criminally charged, convicted on a plea deal, and sentenced to, I believe it was 6 months in jail. In the jail, she had changed her name and I believe her gender marker on her license. She had not yet had bottom surgery, so based on the jail's rules, she got placed on the male side of the jail. She was also denied her hormone replacement therapy.
Wow.
And there are allegations of a lot of harassment by both deputies and inmates. It was a bad situation. I was actually in the courtroom with her the day that she and her attorney appeared in front of one of the judges. And he was a very progressive judge, very thoughtful, very conscientious about people's individual circumstances. And when he heard what was going on in jail, he released her. He put her on, I think it was house arrest or probation, one of the two. Put her on house arrest or probation, and she sued the jail. She sued the sheriff, and that made it up to Fourth Circuit, where they found that her gender dysphoria constituted an ADA protected disability. Now, the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, originally had a carve out that didn't allow anything trans related to be considered a disability. And the judges in the Fourth Circuit found that to be animus towards trans people. Animus just means bad feeling, bad sentiment. And it was therefore not valid. So they declared that gender dysphoria was an ADA protected disability, and that Ms. Williams was entitled to proper treatment for that, which included her hormone replacement therapy. I don't recall if they weighed in on what side of the jail she should have been on, but I think that I would argue that with gender dysphoria, yeah, you should be on the correct side of jail. I mean, I think you should be on the side of the jail with the gender you identify with regardless, but particularly with gender dysphoria, I think there's a good argument for that. And
it easily falls into cruel and unusual punishment.
Yep.
That was part of the argument, yeah. So, changing your name and gender marker on your identity documents helps kind of set the tone for those things. So, for instance, let's say you do go to jail and you haven't had bottom surgery. Well, they now know that, you're transgender, so they're going to have to ask you if there is any gender dysphoria to determine where you need to go. I think that really changing jail policy is actually the correct thing to do, but that's a whole other.
There's a lot that needs to change with jails. Yeah.
That's a whole different podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure someone does it too, and I need to find it because that would be an interesting listen. I was also surprised how easy it was. Like, it seemed the paperwork I would have had a hard time with. I have a hard time putting my current legal name on documents as it is. But it was like literally 3 packets of paper that you filled out for me. So anyone who's intimidated by it should not be as intimidated by it as I was, I hope.
And
it seemed pretty easy for you.
I've been doing it since 2017, so the Kesha Williams case got appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court denied to hear it, which means that the Fourth Circuit ruling stays in place in the Fourth Circuit. Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and I think West Virginia, which is super, super important. Why? Because uh, Governor Youngkin here in Virginia, for instance, just one example, has made some very, very bad policy calls when it comes to trans people, particularly trans students. Now, one way that a trans student can have their name and gender recognized is to have that name change done and that gender marker change done, and the school has to abide by it. The other way is the Kesha Williams way. If they have gender dysphoria, they can actually get a 504 plan in the school because it is a disability. And then teachers can be forced to properly name and gender them as well, even if that work is not done. So two ways to go about that, but name and gender marker change on your identity documents is definitely the easier way, assuming you have access to those things. And
Yeah.
504 plan, harder way, and you have to have parents on board if you're under 18. It gets complicated. Sorry, I had somewhere I was going with that. The cat is about to destroy something.
Story of all of our lives.
Yeah.
Some people will maybe
Um,
clutch at their pearls when they
yeah.
hear the word disability, and I just want to make sure our listeners know that like disability is not
Yeah.
a dirty word, and by claiming a disability, you are getting access to resources and help, and it's not a bad thing to have a disability. And if you don't feel like you have a disability, that's your prerogative, but having the ability to claim it is very powerful.
Let's see if I can back up to where I was, because ADHD is
You have it too? Oh no.
absolutely, and I am well medicated for it until about 5 p.m.
I'm never medicated for it, and it's a struggle.
I think I was talking about the big issue that schools are
Mhm.
in Virginia, and the importance of name and gender marker change. Name and gender marker change is important for schools. It is the easiest way for students to get what they need. Right now, there's a big push to stop minors from getting gender affirming care, and all it's going to do is damage people.
December 4th,
All it's going
everyone
to do
get
is damage
ready.
people.
December 4th.
I have heard people talk about forcing surgeries on minors, which is just not what happens.
No,
Um,
that
I've had
really
to
gets me going
explain.
too, because my parents forced surgery on my ears when I was 3, purely cosmetic, but that's fine. But when it could potentially save a kid's life, it's the worst thing, and it's not even actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in my 7 years of doing this, I have heard of one minor in the DMV, in the DC metro area. Heard of one minor actually having some sort of surgery. That was because of severe, severe dysphoria.
Mm-hmm.
And they were already in their mid-teens at that point.
I wonder if it's the minor that I know who had top surgery at age 16 in the DMV area a few years ago.
It is
I don't know.
extremely uncommon, though.
I've heard of
It
exactly
is
one
very
too, and it was that
uncommon.
person. So it would be interesting if we heard of the same person and it's my friend's kid.
It wouldn't be surprising, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to reach
This is
out.
all easily findable information that people choose not to find, Like, this is one of those situations where ignorance is a choice.
And that's one reason why I'm really excited to be on you all's podcast, because everything that I've seen of it has just been about trans life, about living life as a trans person, everything from Dungeons and Dragons to going to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just kind of focuses on, we're just like cisgender people, and that's what people need to see. So I really appreciate this, because maybe it'll give people some resources for the idea to go out there and look for the actual facts and not just propaganda that's out there.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah, because
what
there was, I'm not going to directly reference the study because I do not have the details written down anywhere, but there was back in the, I guess, early 2000s, before Obergefell, there was a study done where, sorry, I'm also ADHDing and losing my train of thought. But okay, but essentially what they did was they sent people door to door, like ostensibly like taking a survey about like whether people supported marriage equality. And I believe what they did was they had some of the people doing the survey were like straight presenting, whatever you want to interpret that as. And then, but like they would have like that as the control group. And then also doing surveys was essentially like happy, like gay couples presenting as like a gay couple, also doing the surveys. And they would do a ton of these surveys, wait a couple of years, and they came back and did the survey again. And there's like a huge discrepancy between like the people who had been surveyed originally by like this happy, healthy gay couple versus the like straight presenting survey takers. Like there was a huge difference in people's responses before and after about how they felt about marriage equality. Like our primary goal of the podcast is not like to win over cisgender people or like transphobic people. Like we have
If
no
that happens,
illusions
great.
about that. We're mostly in this just to make friends and to like make other trans people feel less alone and find a community. That's the primary goal. But as like a secondary thing, just like having stories and experiences of just like regular everyday trans people is absolutely massive, because a lot of people out there just don't know any trans people aside from whatever, like out trans
Well,
people.
I was going to say, they don't know that they know
Yep.
trans people.
They all do.
But if
They
they hear about
all
trans
do.
things, it's usually the type of person who can just go pay out of pocket for whatever surgery they need. It's not people who have to rely on advocates and insurance and who can't like it's not people who have to deal with gatekeeping and other. When we were making this podcast, it was basically we need to see what real regular everyday trans people go through, and if other people aren't doing it, we should do it.
Basically.
I appreciate that. That's a really good mission.
We're weird and kind of cool, but also kind of lame.
Speaking of kind of cool, at some point off of this podcast, we need to talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
You're welcome at my table. We have
Off
a
of it
slightly
or
broken
on
table.
it, whatever.
Yeah, you're welcome
Fantastic.
in my home anytime. You can come meet your my friend Ari, who's been on the pod once officially, but we've also recorded a second time. Has a saying which is all cats are gay and all gay cats are cousins. So you should meet your cat's cousins.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
We're weird.
Actually, yeah, because my best friend has two cats, and I refer to his cats as my cat's cousins. Yeah.
Yep, all cats are cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And they're all gay. I don't exactly know where the logic in the all gay is, but I stand by it because Ari's never wrong.
That's purely vibes based.
But,
all cats are Scorpios.
Oh, me too. 3 ADHD people in one room, and you've probably got stuff to do. I'm so sorry. We're not.
Oh
good at
no,
focusing.
no. I am very good. I don't have anything on my calendar. I've already eaten dinner just to make sure that I was like good for tonight.
Awesome.
True
And,
allyship.
True.
Fed the cats early.
Mine haven't eaten yet. It's gonna get real crazy here in about 20 minutes. That's fine.
So one thing I was thinking about in our conversation earlier is thinking about how little most cis people know, and a lot of like trans people I know about what rights and protections or lack thereof we actually have. Because like even just in the case of like all of the examples you've mentioned so far in the podcast, like all of these examples are I'd see a cutie on camera.
Delilah. No,
uh,
Cindy Clawford.
Cindy Clawford.
Yeah, she's got a K mark.
She's
She's
beautiful.
beautiful. I love that.
So pretty.
But even in just like the examples that you've used so far tonight, like all of these are very much like one ruling away from like, it's very tenuous. Like it all comes down to just like how the last highest court has interpreted the thing, but there are very little, if any, like written in stone protections that we have of any kind.
And that's because a majority of people in the US, and I use the word majority for a reason, have had very little experience in having their rights legislated. And something that trans people are experiencing, something gay people experience for a long time, so, and to some degree still do experience, is that we have our rights legislated. Virginia still has a constitutional ban on gay marriage. Obergefell was years ago. Years ago, and it is still on Virginia's books.
Gotta love my home state.
Trans people have to worry about bathroom bans and education, and something we all have to worry about now is being discriminated based on somebody's religion, whether it's a healthcare provider or a service provider. These are all things that people can do to us as a gay man, as two trans people, that the majority does not have to worry about. They don't have to worry about walking into a store and getting turned away because they are cishet white people. But if somebody has a firmly held belief, which is what a religious belief is a First Amendment belief, is a firmly held belief. If they have a firmly held belief, they can say it is against their religion for them to serve gay couples or trans people or treat us like humans, because somehow in this country we went from freedom of speech and freedom of religion being about the individual and turned it into what other people can do to the individual. So my ability to just simply be me becomes under attack. We have to worry about, just by virtue of us being us, just by virtue of existing, there's been this push for people to say, nope, that's against my religion, later. And that's catching on in some places. And as a lawyer, I cannot fathom how my right to be, it's not even my right to express myself, it is my right to just be as I am, which should be even better protected than my right to express myself, is somehow being just trampled on by people claiming a right to believe something. Your belief and my existence are on completely different levels.
And like, you can believe whatever you want in the privacy of your own home, but
sorry, that's how I get.
I mean, they don't value...
Sorry for the passion. That's just how I get when I'm talking about civil rights.
We have a whole episode on this, don't worry.
They don't value our existence, though. Like, this was actually ended up being a lot of our like bathroom episode was the whole, this is just the general dynamic of our podcast, by the way. Like, it started off with us just telling stories about our experiences with the bathroom in general. And then it just kind of turned into this whole conversation about like, what is really the animus behind all of the bathroom bills and all of the talk about this. And like, I very much believe that it's just because they don't want us to exist. And like,
it's not, bathroom bills are not about trans people. Think about what they're claiming in the bathroom bills. I had somebody say to me the other day, I don't want my sister to be in a bathroom and get raped by some man in a wig. If you're worried about some man in a wig, then this is not about trans people.
It's about men in wigs,
You're
not
worried
trans
about
women.
you're worried about a cis het man pretending to be trans and going into a bathroom. You're not worried about trans people. No, what you're doing is you are trampling on trans people's rights in favor of your fear of straight men.
Mm-hmm. We have a friend named Felicia who did a TikTok on this the other day, but she went through like 10 years of data from what she could find, and she found 56 cases of girls being attacked in women's rooms, and in 55 of them, it was a cis man.
Yes, and in one of those allegations, because I am familiar, I did similar research. In one of those allegations, it was actually a intimate partner, alleged intimate partner violence that was later recanted.
So the one that was a trans woman attacking a girl in a bathroom, it wasn't even like a random attack. It was an allegation that was never actually substantiated.
Not only not substantiated, but retracted by the victim later.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, our conclusion was basically if we can't go to the bathroom in public, then we can't be in public, which means they don't have to see us, which means they just don't want us.
Mm-hmm. And it's more thinly veiled. I mean, it's very thinly veiled in the way they present it, like in the public sphere. But like, it's just like a thinly veiled version of what I get in my comment sections online, where people aren't trying to cover it up as anything. And like, people have literally told me like that they want to genocide all trans people, you know? Like, but that's just like the more palatable like way of making it seem like I don't know, like a reasonable cause or whatever for, you know. I think that's most of the motivation behind all of that.
Yeah. But back to something Ben asked me earlier, which is the benefit of name and gender marker changes. Ben, you mentioned just how little paperwork there was.
Yeah.
And part of that's because you live in Virginia, and we've got the Virginia Values Act that really kind of streamlined things for us. And because there are so many more benefits of having your name and gender marker changed, the biggest benefit being that you're not outed. I do think that, there have been a lot of people rushing to do it lately because of the change in administration, because of the last time this administration was in power, what they did to trans people. It is a lot. Look it up. It sucks. So there have been a lot of people rushing to get it done. Like I said, I put in probably 20 hours just pro bono on top of my regular work week in the last 2 weeks. And do it when you're ready. There's no rush if you're not ready. But if you are ready, do it now. Because it is easy. It's easier than you think. It is, to give Virginia as an example. Oh, other disclaimer. When I talk about the law, I'm usually talking about Virginia rather than Maryland or DC. Mm-hmm. They may have similar laws. The laws in your state may be completely different. There are states where you can't change your birth certificate, for instance.
We have a couple friends in those states.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in Virginia, I will say it's pretty easy. You start with a name change order with the court. The court looks at it as long as they don't think it's for some fraudulent purpose, or you're not a felon, for instance. Felons have a little more difficulty changing their name. In that case, you have to show good cause. But generally, there's very little reason for the court to actually deny a name change. There are some, and I'm happy to talk with anybody about them. But very little reason for a court to deny a name change. Once that comes in, you go and get your Social Security record updated. At that point, you can get your driver's license updated. Same time you're doing Social Security, you can get your passport updated. And right now, and I'm not sure what date this is going to air, but I will say before the administration takes power, you can self-select your gender marker for your social security and your passport without any additional documentation from your physician, care provider, whomever.
My social security was so easy. It was like the one completely painless part of the process.
Yeah, you walk in, you give them the SS5 form, you give them a certified copy of your name change, you self-select your gender marker, you sit down with them for a little bit, and you walk right out. And they give you a paper that says that they're updating your record in case you need it for somebody else. And within 3 days or so, they've got it updated in their electronic system.
Yeah.
Now, surprisingly, the last thing that I recommend people do in the process in Virginia is birth certificate.
Mhm.
Now, there is a new process where a lot of the courts are just simply sending the name change order to Vital Records, and Vital Records is already amending the birth record
Wow.
before somebody sends in their form for a new copy.
Dang, why wasn't I born in Virginia, Mom and Dad?
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's so annoying.
I had somebody recently with a child born in DC, and I was like, yeah, this would have been easier if it were Virginia. And they were like, what?
You couldn't have gone 15 miles to the west? Come on. Give birth
Yeah,
over there.
yeah.
Is it harder to change a name for a minor versus an adult?
Yes. So for
Like, I'm
minors,
assuming you have to have parental support.
you have to have it. The parent is actually the one who makes the application. Generally, they're going to look for both parents to sign on the application. If both parents don't sign on the application, then what happens is you have a hearing on it. Now, if there is a danger to the child from the second parent, and that is a reality for a lot of trans youth, if there is a danger to the child, uh, a judge in Virginia can hear that without the other parent being there. There are special motions that need to be made. It's called an ex parte hearing. Um, that just means without the other person. But you do have to at least make a showing that there is a danger. You have to show history of violence, that sort of thing. But it can be done.
Cool.
But generally, if both parents, if there's no worry of violence and both parents are there, the judge will look at what is in the best interest of the child, and for that they'll want to see what kind of care the child is getting, what the doctors say, what the school says, things like that.
I mean, I knew it was possible to change name for a minor because my husband did, but not for trans reasons.
A lot of the minors I've worked with have been lucky enough to have two supportive parents.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Say hi to Delilah.
Delilah. Oh, she is so pretty.
She's a
Wow.
Look at that tail.
Aw.
Oh. She waves. She's a little princess.
Oh, she's such a princess. Oh, she's laying down in my lap now. She's like, it's dad time.
I wish one of mine was in my lap.
Oh, so I've been trying to make sure I don't forget this for the longest time because
Oh, yeah,
I
the
have
story.
a moment. Yes. I have a moment of joy that I've been like telling everybody I'm going to share for so long now, but I was like I'm going to wait on it for the like name change specific episode because it's name change related. So the moment has finally come. I will share my Stonewall story. When I was getting all my name change gender marker documents done. This was like pretty shortly after, maybe even before. It was like basically I like came out to everybody and changed all my documents at the same time. And so I was like basically like call me Robin now and also legally you have to. But so anyway, a lot of it was like very easy and straightforward. I did have to get some documents notarized. I like got all of my documents filled out and everything, but I had to go to a notary, like just whatever random notary was at the local bank. And so like I was like I knew it was gonna be fine, but I was also a little bit anxious just because on a social anxiety level, I guess, just because you don't know like who the person is who's going to be the notary. Could just be like some old like cishet man who's just like, I was prepared for just a very uncomfortable situation. I get to the bank and I'm waiting, and the person who is the notary at this bank shows up and introduces himself. His name is Stonewall. First of all, he has a big name tag that said
Oh,
Stonewall, he, him on it. And like he was like extremely welcoming, of course. He was really helpful. We went through the whole process, very straightforward and easy. And then when we finished at the end of it, he was basically just like, "Congratulations. I wish you the best of luck on your new journey." It's like, "Thank you." So like not only did it like turn out to be less scary than I thought, but I just happened to find an ally who like was the notary doing this for me. It's really
That is
nice.
amazing.
Mhm.
And just word of just general advice to people out there who are scared of that kind of thing.
I love this story.
It's an amazing story. I wish I had known you back then because I could have notarized for you. It would have been much easier. Um, but there are folks like me, people, go to your state's LGBT bar association. Your state has one, and they'll be able to point you to a lawyer's office that's going to be friendly, that can, if they don't know how to fill out the documents for you, they'll at least have a notary that you can use for your documents. Um, that's one of the easiest ways to find help. But it is good to know that there are allies out there just randomly out in public.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice. You never know where you're gonna find that. But like one of the reasons that we've been doing essentially since the election, we've been working double time to find as many like advocates and like people who work in more of a professional capacity like yourself, um to be able to get into some of the stuff, because all of these things are things that we stumbled upon just like by happenstance. But if you're just coming out and you don't have like a large trans community, and you're just like trying to figure all this stuff out like by Google or whatever, like this is not easy information to find. This is all information that you find out by like person to person communicating. And like did you find Chip through your doctor, or what was the connection there?
Yes, I was given Chip's name and email at my first appointment with my doctor that is my now primary care doctor and HRT doctor.
Yeah, and Ben had a 6-year journey of just gatekeeping, trying to find a doctor who would even have the conversation basically with him about getting on HRT. And then his husband ended up doing some like searching and found like a queer clinic locally.
There are a lot of queer clinics out there that are great resources for trans people. Um, yeah, the one that Ben goes to is actually my primary doctor as
Hmm.
well because they provide care for gay men as well.
Yeah.
Um,
No wonder he had your name.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Because I was looking for somebody who was not going to be judgmental if I
Mhm.
need to talk about sexual health, and would be comfortable for me to discuss private parts of my life. Because again, who in the room likes talking about their genitals?
Mm.
Not me.
Mhm.
And one thing I do love about our doctor, I'm assuming it's just the same doctor for everyone, is
Yeah,
he's not weird about the fact that I don't have a sexual life. I don't experience
yeah.
like horniness.
Yeah.
And it is not an issue with all my other cis het doctors. It's been like, are you sure? And it's like,
They
yeah,
think
I'm
you're
sure.
lying to them. Like your experience isn't
Yeah.
everybody's experience.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah. No. He's fantastic about all that sort of stuff. Um, I don't want to disclose too much about who our doctor is. It's just I want to.
I
As part of my
I
life, I'd like to keep private.
But I love him.
He's
Yeah,
great. He's great.
we always like
Yeah.
censor out his name on the podcast too.
Okay.
He's come up quite a bit, but we don't share his
But
information.
one thing that is podcast canon, he did prescribe Robin E over one of the online ones too. So we share a doctor.
We
Nice.
did briefly, yes.
Yeah. No, he's good. And there are a lot of good providers out there. I think the biggest issue that people run into is that providers like that are only in urban areas.
hmm
So, I mean, our proximity to DC is really what helped us out there. But people out in like Bristol, Virginia aren't going to have that same experience.
Yeah. Um, so one piece of advice that I've gotten from somebody before is like, if you're not like in a more urban area or somewhere where those like specifically like queer affirming clinics exist, if you have a doctor who is like self-identifying as queer or has a pride flag on their like keychain or whatever, if they're identifying in some way, like usually or at least often, um, those doctors know other doctors who are queer or queer affirming, who know other doctors and professionals. In a lot of ways, it's like the um, battle days of being queer in the world, of just like everything is word of mouth. You can't just like find those professional resources, like a lot of that is still how we have to do these things. But if you find somebody in a professional capacity, like people have connections to each other. So
Yeah. Yeah. That is very true. And Google, I believe, just put basically an LGBTQ friendly tag on business listings. So if you have a business and you want to let people know that you are LGBTQ friendly, queer affirming, go to your Google listing and mark that you are. You can do that now. And actually, Robin, there's
Am I
something.
still really delayed? Let's see.
Not really. I don't
Yep.
think you are. You are okay.
no, we just weren't
Maybe.
Yeah,
responding.
we did take a couple of seconds to respond
Yeah, just clap and I'll let you know how long it takes to go back.
there. But
Anyway,
I was
what were you
saying that
Jake?
one thing I saw that one thing that I wanted to talk about before that I didn't get a chance to, that I want to make sure uh, is talked about, because it's just kind of one of those things that is so often forgotten. Foreign-born people. We have a large immigrant community in Virginia, particularly, well, actually throughout the state.
Yeah.
And if you are foreign-born, si era nacido en otro país, you can change your name here in the US. Now, your government may not recognize that on your passport, but at least any document that you get here will reflect that. And I'm going to repeat that in Spanish if you don't mind. Si quiere cambiar su nombre aquí en los Estados Unidos, puede hacerlo. Y es posible que su gobierno no lo respeta en el pasaporte, pero puede cambiar todos sus documentos de aquí, como su licencia y su número social, con el nombre correcto.
I can confirm that was what he said, and it was not random. Yep.
Yes.
I'm better at listening to Spanish than speaking it, but I'm pretty good. Are there any resources like nonprofits or like legal groups that you could recommend to people who may not be in our general geographic area for name changes and stuff?
So as far as legal groups go that aren't in our area, I'm not as familiar with legal groups themselves, but the advocacy groups out there, such as the National Center for Trans Equality, they can be reached at transequality.org.
That's how I got my information.
They've got a wonderful section on their website about name and gender marker changes. It's got a lot of information. Some of it might not be the most up to date, but it'll be there and you can at least get an idea of where you're supposed to go for your documents. Any of your local or statewide equality groups. Here we've got Equality Arlington, Equality Prince William, Equality Loudoun, and uh, yeah, I'm not biased or anything being on their board, Equality Virginia. But there are a lot of other equality groups throughout the US, Equality Florida, Equality California. I'm not sure if they're called Equality Maryland or if they've got a different name. But most states will have their own equality group, their own equality advocacy group. Or in EV's case, there's the educational group and the advocacy group, two different things. And those groups will often have on their websites lists of things like medical providers, legal providers, and people that you can go to for gender affirming care. Equality Virginia actually helped the Virginia Equality Bar Association do pop up clinics throughout the state for name and gender marker changes. It was really successful. I don't know if they've been doing as many of them lately, but they are still happening throughout the state.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to just say while we're here, we mentioned earlier about there being some states where like you can't change your birth certificate. There's also a lot of states where they have legally made it very difficult to do, but not impossible to do. And if you are in one of those places where you cannot see any possible way to get your documents and your name changed, there very well may still be a way. There may be resources. There are advocates out there too who like have the like legal expertise or whatever else their expertise may be. That said, like our the entire staff of our organization is like Ben and I, but there are a lot of people on our Discord who are spread out across the country and outside of the country. And we do have a section in there that I believe is just called Ask for Help that we just like
Yep.
added in like post election. And there are a lot of people on there who know things about different parts of the country that we don't know, or have connections to people who have connections to people who have connections. That said, there is a way to do this. So if you want to change your name and you're running into a lot of roadblocks, like there's somebody who can help you with it. And it might take a
Yeah,
little bit
I've
of
got a
work,
lot of free
but like
time in the
we'll
mornings.
find a
I'll
way.
do it.
Yeah. We'll find a way, or we'll find somebody who can help you find a way.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that in some places, the work to do name and gender marker changes would be easy, simple, straightforward, and it's just not. DC's name change application is so long. You have to list all of your creditors on it because they want to make sure that all of your creditors
Oh,
have
I'm
been
glad that wasn't required in
notified.
Virginia.
Yeah. And when you change your birth certificate, not only will they mark it as amended, they will say what the amendment was unless the judge tells them not to. So it'll say name change from such and such. So it will dead name you on your birth certificate still, unless the judge tells them not to.
It's like the UK. In order to change your name in a lot of places in the UK, you have to do in the newspaper, like what your name was and what your name
Yeah,
will be.
publication. That is actually one way.
There's parts
Yeah,
of the US that do that
Exactly
too.
what I was going to say. Now, actually, DC birth certificate brings up a really good point. Yeah, like I said, that can be very, very outing. So you go to hand in your birth certificate for a new job so that they can, prove your ID. You've just told them that you're trans, whether you like it or not. Passports.
Mm-hmm.
Passports can be used in every single situation where a birth certificate can be used, and it will not note a dead name. It will not note a gender marker change. It will just note what gender marker you currently use and your current legal name. it is the least outing of all identity documents and should be obtained, as soon as possible. As soon as possible.
And yeah,
And there are waivers if you can't afford those fees as well.
mhm. And like as of now, like for the most part, like all of the federal documents are so much easier to change than all of the state documents. Like we mentioned, Social Security, like in and out, so easy. As of now, very easy to do. So while it's very easy to do,
Yeah, as of November.
if you plan on doing it, I would advise doing it sooner than later.
Expedited service is 2 to 3 weeks. If you get it in by Christmas, should be there by January 20th.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you really wanted to say before we wrap up? Because I'm sure Delilah and Cindy Clawford would love your attention.
They are both sleeping next to me on the couch now.
Amazing. This is Mocha. She's our new lady who showed up outside of our house 4th of July weekend. And we took her to the shelter and made sure it was all legal. But the cat distribution system was at work.
100%. Let's see. Any other legal stuff that trans people should know? So much other legal stuff that trans people should know. So trans people come from.
Everybody needs a lawyer.
Yeah,
friend.
I mean, I'm trying to think of the most important things for the podcast here. So the next thing I would probably say is second parent adoptions. A lot of trans people are in relationships with, other trans people, people that have the same genitalia that they do. Sexuality varies among trans people so much. And because of that, you've got some families where you have two people that have vaginas who have kids together. Possibly through artificial insemination, possibly through, maybe one's a step parent, or possibly through intercourse with a friend. You just never know how these things go. And so you've got two people with the same genitalia raising a child where the child is biologically one of theirs and not biologically the others. But maybe they're both on the birth certificate. Maybe one of them's on the birth certificate. Even if they are both on the birth certificate, there is only a presumption, and here I'm talking about Virginia and DC, there's only a presumption that the non-biological parent is the parent. That is not the same as a conclusion. A presumption in the law can be rebutted. So to avoid later complications, I absolutely cannot stress how important it is to do a second parent adoption, particularly given the way things are going politically in this country. That second parent adoption becomes that legal conclusion. That becomes an unrebuttable conclusion that you are the other parent. So if you have a child that you are not biologically the parent of, even if you are on the birth certificate, check your state's laws, talk to an attorney. If you're in my area, talk to me, and get that second parent adoption.
I just thought of a question I would love to ask
Please do.
Before we let you go. For those of us who are trans and married to cis people, where upon changing our gender marker, we have a same-sex marriage, do you think we need to be worried that our marriage will become invalidated?
That is...
Like, how does that work once you're already married?
Normally I would have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Normally I'd have an answer for that, but the Supreme Court has been throwing out a lot of precedent in favor of things that don't make a lot of legal sense when it comes to civil rights.
Like, can they do a mass annulment like that? Is that a thing they can do?
Marriage is guided by state law. So your marriage license is based on the state's issuance of that license to you. So it's the state law that's going to control whether or not you are married. Whether a state can invalidate an entire group of people's marriage licenses, I'm going to have to argue no, they cannot do that. However, I don't know if you remember the time before same sex marriage was legal. Um, there were a lot of states denying rights to couples that traveled across state lines with their licenses. And I think that given the way things are going, should the Supreme Court overturn Obergefell v. Hodges, that there's a chance that we could go back to that. And that was a really painful place for a lot of people. I am hoping that it does not go back to that. I think that there are enough justices on the Supreme Court that have the sense to not overrule that. But we've said that before. Look at where we are with women's bodies.
It's a nightmare.
I'm done.
I saw a TikTok yesterday, which I will repost and make available. But the person who made the TikTok was a lawyer who's married to another woman. She gives a full rundown of like if you are gay and married, like every document and legal thing that you can like shore up now in case something happens, in which the federal or state government would try to invalidate your marriage.
Last will and
So
testament,
essentially, so you still have those like
medical power of attorney, durable power of attorney. Those are probably the three biggest ones. What else? That last will and testament's a big one.
yeah.
Do you do those? I don't. If you're looking for a referral in Northern Virginia, Geller Law Group does do them. They are a woman-owned, queer-friendly law practice. They're
amazing. Yeah. I'll tell my husband we got to get over there.
Marriage licenses, are those
issued by the county?
Are they? Well, yes, but I know this is like county law, and so like different in 1,000 places, but is that a thing that I should think about updating? Is it updatable in places, or like I have no idea?
So what you do is you take your name change order to the clerk's office where they issue the marriage licenses, and the clerk can do the name change on the marriage license for you. That is a big one. School records, if you have kids, is another big one. Make sure that you take your name and gender marker change there. That way the school doesn't try to keep you from exercising your parental rights. Because as we know, they're all in favor of, parents' right to know what's going on in their child's life until that parent is LGBTQ.
And then they need to stay off of school property.
Yeah.
Yay.
So, other things that need to be updated: insurance, bank accounts. Concealed carry permit tends to be a little tricky. When I say insurance, I mean both health insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, professional insurance, professional licenses. If you are a lawyer, therapist, doctor, any of those sorts of things, architect, anything where you need a professional license, make sure that you update your information with them. Yeah, driver's licenses. There's just so much to update.
There's so many.
So many. I usually recommend that my clients get 10 certified copies of their name change order. Certified copy is certified by the clerk of the court that it is true and accurate. And these days, 10 I don't think is enough anymore.
I might go for 15 then. This has been really helpful.
Oh my God, yeah. There in the past like 2 minutes you cleared up so many things that we've all like been talking with each other about, like figuring out, especially when it comes to like your kids and your marriage. Like, there's so many questions that people have had. And like, we're always like, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. It's been really nice to have a
I
lawyer.
mean, here's the thing about being a lawyer.
Even though it's not legal advice.
It's not legal advice. And here's the thing about being a lawyer. I have my opinion about how things could or would go in court should something end up in court, right? And I like to think that my opinions are very smart. However, we're also dealing with other lawyers on the other side who think that they're very smart. We're dealing with judges who think that they're very smart and they think that they're very fair. But ultimately, we're dealing with people. We are dealing with human beings who are coming from wherever they're coming from. They have, they've got their good sides and they've got their flaws. But judges, whether we're talking about general district court judges at the state level, folks that handle the small claims, magistrates, we're talking about circuit court judges at the state level, or we're talking about the Supreme Court justices. Ultimately, we're talking about humans who bring their ideals with them. They bring their opinions with them. There are things that they may not be aware that they're prejudging. So, yes, I do think that my legal analysis and the opinions that I just gave about things like marriage and kids in school and all that, I do think that should all relatively hold up. But the reality is we're dealing with people who may not have those opinions. And that's where we have to fight. And that's why I mentioned before I'm a board member with Equality Virginia. That's why I do that state level work, because when we're talking about the federal judges in particular, they can do a lot of damage when it comes to rights. They can. And that is sad and it's terrifying, and it's also just the way our country was set up. But what they can't do is determine what a state is going to say. And we can still legislate increased protections. We can still educate people. We can still go to school board meetings and talk about our experiences as queer people and what that meant for us becoming who we are and what it's going to mean for the next generation. We can talk to the mayor of our local city, and I've got this little grin on my face because I'm talking to several mayors right now about how to increase protections on a local level, how to make sure that businesses are complying with the Virginia Values Act, for instance, to make sure that trans people can use the bathroom that matches their identity. We can do all of that. And it's that local and state level stuff that's really going to make the difference in these next 4 years. The next 4 years on a national level, they're bleak. I mean, there's no other way around it. Next 4 years on a national level are bleak for LGBTQ people. But if we can organize at a state level, if we can organize at a local level, if we can just get out there and talk to people, it'll make a huge difference.
We got this.
Yeah.
We're strong.
One last thing that I wanted to mention, while we're still on the air, is December 4th. The Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments for United States versus Skrmetti, I think is how it's pronounced. Which is going to be like a pretty important Supreme Court case as far as trans people are concerned.
Yeah, it's like trans minor gender affirming care in Tennessee, I believe.
Yes, which is what the case is about, but also it has a lot of very significant implications further down the line, not just for trans minors, but trans adults, depending on how the case goes. Also, the lawyer arguing at the Supreme Court is Chase Strangio. I'm not sure about the last name, but he is the first openly trans lawyer to argue before the Supreme Court. So very cool
That is
too.
correct. And I did do my homework on this case before coming on the podcast because people have been asking. And
Yeah.
what this is it's a right to privacy case. It is, does the state have a right to say what proper medical care is between me and my doctor? And in this case, they're using a minor to try and make it seem like there's some sort of child abuse going on. But really, what it boils down to is whether or not care is appropriate. And I think that when it comes to things like appropriate care, what we're talking about is age appropriate care, individual appropriate care, and whether or not the Supreme Court is going to weigh in on that, either for or against trans affirming care. I think that if they weigh in against it, there are going to be way too many repercussions in other areas of medical care. And I think that this court is smart enough to see that. I hope that this court is smart enough to see that because it is going to come back to bite them in the ass if they rule against trans people here. I'm actually kind of surprised they even took the case, but that's another thing. I would have had to have seen. I did not do my homework on where it ended up in the circuit court, so maybe that's why they took it. But the good news about this case, not only that I think it's fantastic that we have our first openly trans person arguing before the Supreme Court. I think that is a landmark in and of itself. I think it adds to visibility. I think it adds to credibility. I think it's just fantastic. But beyond that, the legal team they've put together, it is the ACLU of Tennessee. It is the ACLU just nationally. It is one of the highest powered firms in DC that is taking the lead on the case. They've got the proper litigants. They've got the parents, the child, the doctor, all on the same side, arguing for age-appropriate, gender-affirming care. So I think that all of the dominoes are set up to fall correctly. The question is whether the court is smart enough to see that ruling against this family and this doctor and this child is going to set a really bad precedent for a lot of care decisions in the future. Because care, it's one thing to govern care that is truly dangerous, care that is just in no way appropriate for anyone, because that's not care. It's one thing to legislate that, things like back in the day when they used to give cocaine as a treatment. That's one thing to legislate that. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to legislate people's what is actually appropriate care for people's individual situations.
Like puberty blockers. Oh no.
Yeah,
completely reversible. Oh no.
And
like that's what's happening. Sorry.
Legislators are not doctors, and they need to lead that kind of regulation to the medical boards and take recommendations from the medical boards. So I think everything.
I was actually thinking about going there on December 4th with a sign that says appointed officials need to stop practicing medicine without a license.
It's good.
I unfortunately have 2 hearings scheduled for that day, so not in the Supreme Court, so I won't be. I won't be there. I won't be there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Holy crap!
Thank you. Okay. This has been.
Oh my god! Thank you. This was so good. Yes, and we don't have a huge platform yet, but if anything comes up at any point that you have information that you want to get out there, that you think other trans people should know or need to know, like feel free to either pass it along or like you have an open invitation to be on the
Well,
podcast
thank
at any
you.
time. So
I actually just thought
yes,
of one other thing. Goddamn ADHD. An hour and a
please.
half into this.
It's all of us.
So one thing that I recently was asked was whether or not the FDA is going to do anything about HRT, and the answer there is they're not. They're not. There have to be hearings. There has to be some sort of danger for them to revoke its status as an approved drug. That being said, HRT for gender affirming care is off label. What that means is that HRT is prescribed for some things, for instance, glandular problems, missing a gland not functioning properly, um, glands changing the way they function over time. That's what HRT is on label for. It's off label for gender affirming care, meaning that doctors prescribe it for gender affirming care, even though it's not necessarily approved for that purpose. But what a doctor prescribes and how they prescribe it is based on that doctor's knowledge of that patient and what they believe appropriate care to be. The FDA can't legislate that. They are not doctors. They can't disapprove an already approved drug without hearings and some sort of reason for it. So what we're really going to be up against here, and this next statement may be something that you want to cut from the podcast, because I don't know if we want to give people ideas, although I do think they already have these ideas, is insurance.
Yeah, we already know what you're going to say.
It's that the administration will give insurance, whether it's federally backed insurance, from Medicare, Medicaid, states running their programs still are getting their money from the federal government, and the president-elect may say, let's stop doing this. Let's stop this kind of care. We're not going to cover it. You don't have to cover it. And insurance companies may stop covering it. That is my big concern for my trans clients.
Yeah. We already know they're talking about it, so it's just a matter of if they do it. And if the insurance companies follow suit or not, because maybe it's not worth the press for them.
Unfortunately, with TRICARE, I'm going to be screwed.
But the FDA can't do anything themselves. It would be up to TRICARE, Medicare, Medicaid. It'll be up to the federal government, but it's also up to the state governments. So again, when I was talking about state and local being our last line of defense when it comes to insurance, insurance is regulated by the states. So you want to make sure that you're talking to your legislatures about what this kind of coverage means for your life, what it means for you to be able to live an authentic life, just like anybody else, and try to make sure that legislation is passed that protects your coverage.
Start saving now if you can.
As for the federal stuff, I really can't help with, unfortunately, because there's not a lot that we can do about that. Yeah. But I will say that if you do have those federal programs, if you're able, and not everybody is, but if you're able, private coverage might be a better option. And you can have co-insurances where one insures some things and the other insures other things. I mean, if you ask me, this is a great way for insurance companies to get more paying customers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's keep that part
I'm
on
going to
the
be looking
podcast.
real fast because
Capitalism.
every time I make an appointment,
exactly.
they ask anyway. Yeah.
And speaking of insurance, that's one thing that's important to know as a trans person as well, is that your insurance will always keep your original gender marker on file. Some will change it, some won't. The reason for that is that there is care that is dependent upon what organs you have in your body. If you are a man who needs a radical hysterectomy, or a woman who needs her prostate removed, insurance is going to have questions about that. if they don't have your old gender on file. So when you are going to be told that no, they need to keep your old gender on file. That is why. So don't be. Yeah, there's a lot to feel about that for a lot of reasons, but just know that there is actually a medical reason for them to keep it, as much as it sucks. And yeah, there are ways in which it declines to acknowledge your identity.
The tests dependent on those gender markers are life-saving.
Exactly.
Yeah. And by the time we have published this episode, we've already, probably right before this one, published our interview with Ivy, who is a patient advocate and specifically works like between patients and insurance companies to help work through a lot of these issues. I know she has told us that she's still very much taking clients. So if you need it, let's go ahead and fill out her schedule for the next couple months.
And she does have payment plans and sliding scales depending on need. I was checking out her website earlier.
Exactly. And there are, like we said earlier, there are a lot of resources out there. They're not always easy to find, but get in touch with us, get on the Discord. There are people out there with answers for your questions. Sometimes it takes more work than other times to find those people, but like there's always ways to do these things. So well, thank you so much for being on. This was really...
Thank you so much for having me.
You're amazing.
I'm really leaving this time, I promise.
Best first cis with an asterisk guest we could have asked for.
I like that. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. This is great, and maybe I'll come back one day, and there'll be some good updates with things like some local stuff that I've got in the works that I can't talk about.
And if you want to play D&D for real, send me an email. We're trying to get a local game together.
For real.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's for Chip Clapp only, not for all of our listeners. Our house is only so big, okay?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I make mean snacks, just so you know.
You're in. You were already in, but you're definitely in.
I'll see you guys around then.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Or, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Thanks.
I need to get that New York out of me. I'll see y'all around, not you guys. It's Long Island.
Oh,
Long Island will never leave me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm a Northeast.
Oh, okay. So you know what I mean. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. My name is Robin. And I don't know how we end these. There's no formal way of doing this. I have been Robin, and I continue to be trans.
I have been Ben, and I will always be trans.
All right. Thanks again, Chip. We'll see y'all next time.
Bye. Okay, you're the perfect guest because that's what Robin and I do all the time. We're constantly singing and making up new lyrics.
Yes. I mean, I don't really think about it necessarily because it just happens naturally to me. Just a joy within my heart, I guess. But one time when I was editing an episode, I was like, I'm going to count because I feel like I'm singing a lot. And we sang at least 4 times in one episode.
You should do a montage of you singing.
Just
turn it into a musical.
There's been Eminem.
So turn it into a full-length musical. Yeah. Oh, nice.